Hello and welcome to the Shea Hates Everything Podcast, where we talk about video games, movies, comics, and other shit that matters. My name is Shea, and today I hate technology.
And my name is Kyle, and today I hate traveling.
So, yes, this is the Shea Hates Everything Podcast. It is a spin-off of my website, SheaHatesEverything.com, which you should totally visit and see like all my cool reviews and stuff. But we actually had a fun bit that we planned to see how many times I could name drop my website in this premiere pilot episode. So and see how we can keep it going. Yes, so that's one. I'll bring it up every single time that I can. No, I won't actually do that. That's ridiculous. But before we dive into the actual podcast, I just have to say, so we have this Today I Hate thing, kind of a fun spin for the podcast. And Kyle, your hate is traveling. You just got back from visiting me in Georgia, where, you drove 8 hours from Ohio to Georgia to see your brother, who you see 2 to 3 times a year, and your hate is traveling? Are you trying to say that you regret coming to see your one and only brother?
You can't put me on the spot like that, man. That's not fair. All right, short answer or long answer? They're both yes.
Boy. That's not. That sucks, man.
No, just the process of traveling is a miserable process, especially for me, because I'm a total homebody. But yeah.
Well, but see, my thing is I'm also a homebody. If I got to choose something to do, it would be sit at home and watch Netflix with my wife. That's our favorite thing to do. But when it comes to legit traveling, going out of town, experiencing new things, that I do really like. I don't want to go to a bar on a Friday night. I don't want to go downtown Atlanta and go see some stupid shitty play. That I don't want to do. But actual out of state traveling, even out of country traveling, I love. Why do you not like that?
I like being surrounded by my bullcrap possessions that I own. I like having access to all my stuff. I really need to sleep in my own bed. I can't sleep with crap if I'm anywhere else.
Okay,
and
I get that.
It's for me, it's almost as if it's an animal instinct of tension and discomfort. There's always that a baseline level inside me it's kind of like a fight or flight almost, where I feel anxious all the time because I'm not in my established safe zone,
Yeah.
And so that kind of undercuts my entire experience. You and I, family vacations and stuff, we've gone out of the country before, but it's, I don't know, I've never felt comfortable anywhere except at my computer and in my bed.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that mentality. I get why you would feel that way. I just think it's stupid, and you're stupid for feeling that way. That's really just the crux of kind of what I'm getting at. So Thanks. This is the Shea Hates Everything podcast. So really, like we said in the intro, kind of what we're going to be doing on here is talking about video games and movies, television shows, books, comics, kind of all the pop culture things that Kyle and I have grown up talking about. And in case you didn't already get a sense of it, we are brothers. We have been our entire lives, or at least his entire life. We've been
much
brothers.
To our dismay.
But it's fun for us to be talking about these things because, one, we grew up talking about them and we're very passionate, opinionated people. But two, we kind of go back and forth. We agree on a lot of things, and we also vehemently disagree on a lot of things. And I think that sparks a lot of good conversations. And so this is just a really good medium. One, just as an excuse for us to hang out and talk about shit. But two, kind of share and spread our important opinions on important things.
Some might say
the
most important opinions of
100%. Totally agree. I can't think of a single opinion that is better than mine, or a single opinion that is second better than yours. So it's this is the one-stop shop for opinions on cool shit.
Yep.
But before we dive into kind of the idea behind this premiere pilot episode is to introduce ourselves a little bit to people that don't know us, give you a little bit of insight into the things we like and don't like, so you kind of have a better framework for our opinions, and that way, you know, when we go through all of our favorite things in future episodes, once we're shitting on your favorite things, you have plenty of ammo to come right back at us. So that was kind of the idea behind this. But before we dive in, I wanted to lay out kind of what all of you can expect on a week-to-week basis. We're going to aim for a bi-weekly upload schedule, which is like every other week. That's bi-weekly, right? Question mark. I believe that's what that means. Not twice a week. It's not twice a week. It's every other week. How about that?
Semi-weekly.
Sure, yes, absolutely. That makes sense. Sometimes, yes. So every other week is when we'll aim to be uploading, so you can expect that. And as far as the format goes, we'll always do just some little chit-chat and talk to start the episode. We'll talk through games we're playing, TV shows we're watching, books we're reading, that kind of thing. Any big news updates or big things that for us to talk about that are happening in the industry, primarily the video game industry, but occasionally, you know, TVs and movies and stuff. We're not going to talk about, like, fucking Shia LaBeouf is going to be playing this random character in the next Spider-Man movie, because who gives a shit? But if there's like stuff that matters that we have strong opinions on, we'll certainly talk about those. And then we'll always have a fun segment to go through. And for the example, this week's segment is going to be talking about our favorite things. And then we'll wrap up the show with a segment that is probably my favorite segment, called Shea's Hate of the Week, and we'll get more into that once we get there. Kind of to wrap everything up, we obviously don't have any for this episode because it's the beginning, but we'll also take emails. Any comments you guys have, you can send to info@SheaHatesEverything.com. Does that technically count as a Shea Hates Everything, like, plug? Because we want to talk about Shea Hates Everything plugs for my website, SheaHatesEverything.com, the place to go for video game, movie news.
All right, now we're at 3.
So that's kind of a breakdown of what we're going to be doing on the podcast. A little bit behind why I decided to call this Shea Hates Everything. It originally started, obviously I'm a very opinionated person, and occasionally that can come across as a little bit aggressive, and people tend to get defensive about their opinions when they're talking to me about mine. I'm not afraid to share how I feel and think about things. Kyle is 100% the same way. I think occasionally maybe he's more tactful. Like maybe like he can be a little nicer about sharing his opinions than I can be. But it's
like
something I'm
1%.
working on as someone who's almost 30. What?
Like 1% nicer.
Yeah, 1% nicer. No. But that's kind of what makes our conversations work, is I give a little bit more of the, what I like to think, realist, not cynic, but realist attitude, and Kyle's a little more of the optimistic side, the gentler, more positive side, and that makes us mesh well together. But all throughout high school and college, I was very strong in my opinions on things, and about things that don't matter, like, you know, Michael Bay's first Transformers movie and how it is absolute fucking garbage, and the way that series has taken over modern culture makes me so fucking angry. There's such stupid action movies with no substance. Okay. So that's an example of,
it's a hot take,
how yes, hot takes on Michael Bay's Transformers. So that kind of led to all of my friends saying that Shea hates everything, which, you know, was a fun little dig at me, but also makes sense because I'm very opinionated, very loud about my opinions. And so when I was coming up with a website, an avenue to share these opinions and kind of put my creativity out there a little bit more, Shea Hates Everything just kind of felt like the right name, because really at the core of it, I wanted to spite them. So that's how Shea Hates Everything was born.
It was born of pure, condensed negative emotion.
100%. Hey, man. It's all about the brand and owning that brand.
Yeah.
I work in marketing. Like, that's the whole thing, and I'm owning that brand.
Watch your blood pressure.
If you have an opinion that is different than mine, it's wrong, but that's just fine. We'll talk about it, and that'll make you feel bad.
And defensive.
So, yes. So, that's a little bit about Shea Hates Everything podcast. I want to dive into some of our favorite things so we can start the episode off a little bit more positive. And like I said, offer up our listeners some ammo once we start making fun of your favorite things so that you can make fun of our favorite things. It seems only fair. So we're going to talk about our favorite video games, favorite movies, TV shows, books, comics, all that kind of stuff, all the things that we're going to talk about on this podcast. So Kyle, before we dive into that, tell us a little bit about you.
Well, as you outed earlier, I do live in Ohio, so there's a decent chance I will wind up overdosing on heroin. I have a girlfriend. We're
Topical.
Yes,
Topical.
yeah, super topical. Again, hot take. I have a girlfriend. We are currently in the process of attempting to buy a house, and it's been a complete and utter long-form nightmare every day. I work in theater education. That's where I got my schooling. I went to school for theater studies. I am now the director of a high school's theater program, along with a co-director. I am also the site manager for that theater, and during the school year, I work as a special needs aide with your non-typical students. Also, self-touted retired YouTube sensation. I was a pretty big deal.
What does that even mean? Like, what is... Okay, like, every single one of those words put together, like, that is not a cohesive thought. Retired YouTube sensation. Mm-hmm. Like, those words, like, that's not a thing. What is a retired YouTube sensation?
For a long time, I was hard-hitting people's computer monitors and stereo setups, No, I wasn't. I didn't have a very big channel. I did it for like 2.5 years. I had like 760 something subscribers at my peak, and I have not uploaded in a very long time. So
you inspired me to, because you started uploading and it was primarily like Minecraft videos that you were doing and some like other random video game videos, and I had always wanted to do that as well, and you kind of inspired me to start my own. I certainly never was as big as yours. But we did some like Minecraft videos together and some co-op games together. So just like this podcast, it was a fun way for us to like have an excuse to play games and talk to one another. Yeah. But I know, like, when it comes to your sensation aspect, you had one video series that actually was pretty successful.
Yeah. So I actually, because we had, it came up a conversation with us like yesterday. And so last night, I decided to stare myself in the mirror for a bit and watch a bunch of my old videos, and I kind of looked them up. No. And
that's a dark hole to fall down
into.
Dude,
it really is. But it made me realize, I had a couple of like good series, and I had a couple of good months in there where I was actually entertaining and not annoying, but the rest of it complete bullshit.
Sure.
But yeah, the one series like a Minecraft adventure map, and that was kind of, I got in early on that trend. And no one had put up any videos of that map yet, and it became a popular map. So a bunch of people searched it to see like what it was, and see what it was like, if it was worth their time playing. Because there are also a bunch of crappy adventure maps out there at the time. And so I mean, that video has like 56,000 views, and then the second one has like 15, and then it goes down third, fourth, and fifth.
I think exponentially as people got to know more about you.
Exactly. But yeah, and so I mean, that was I have like 180,000 lifetime views across over 700 videos.
Yeah, that's like way more than me. I probably have like 20,000 total views across my like 200, 300 videos.
But I produced over 700 videos.
Yeah, man, that's a lot.
Because I was doing it. For a little while there, I was doing more than one video a day.
Yeah.
Oh, that was a hell of a time.
But it was, I felt, at least for me, and I don't want to like speak for you, but you've always been much better at the technological aspect. Thus, my hate of the day being technology, just blanket statement. I fucking hate technology because I don't get it. But I know for me, it was a really good experience to learn a little bit more about video editing, and more so just as a creative outlet to like, I got to play video games and talk to people, and not that I ever had a big audience whatsoever, but like I had some people that I met through that I played games with, and it was just, it was a very fun experience in my life. And that was back when I was working 2 part-time shitty retail jobs that I hated, that I was getting nothing out of, and trying to make my acting dream happen. So it was just like a nice thing to come home and do that and have a little bit of fun and learn some technical skills at the same time.
Right. Yeah. And they're super useful skills, like kind of no matter what you're doing in life. They're, like you said, very useful creative outlet skills that I think are useful in a variety of situations. And so, that I don't consider that time wasted. I also made enough money from YouTube to reimburse myself for the microphone I'm currently talking on, so that's a win.
Hey man, yeah, absolutely. You broke even.
Yes. But not if I had actually spent that time at a real job.
Yeah, like if you break down how much money we made per hour, sad.
It's less than a penny.
Sad news. Yeah, it's not great.
Yeah.
But yeah, so a little bit about you, a little bit about me. Like I said, I live in Georgia, originally from Ohio. I've lived here 5 or 6 years now. Went to school for acting at a school in Ohio, and that's where I met my now wife. And originally I was going to do the whole thing, moving to LA after college, blah, blah, blah. I stayed home for a year to save up some money, and I was still dating this girl. She was going to move back home to Georgia because that's where she was from. And I had a friend too who was like, hey, the acting scene in Georgia is actually kind of growing. So I moved here to chase my acting dream and chase a girl. And I'm not really doing anything with acting, so that didn't work. But I did marry the girl, so I feel like that's like a net win on my end. Like the important thing worked out. But yeah, I work in marketing. It's really just a good way to maintain a little bit of that creativity that I kind of seek in a job and in life. And since I'm not doing the acting stuff, I try to find a lot of other ways to express that creativity and really make things that are my own, which is kind of why SheaHatesEverything.com started. There's two, and why I'm doing this podcast in the first place. But yeah, other than that, I have a dog named Beamer. He's amazing. He's like a boxer mix, kind of mutt. We don't really know, but he's the best dog ever. And one of my favorite pastimes is singing popular songs, but replacing the words with Beamer's name.
I do that too.
So good. So good. So
it's
fun.
The best.
Yeah. And kind of beyond that, Kyle and I, we both grew up playing drums. Do you still play ever?
No. So the drums have been up in the attic for several years now.
Yeah.
And so I say when, but if we manage to get the house in the guest room, I'll have a space to be able to set it up and start playing again.
Nice. Are you are you located really close to neighbors where they will hate you if you're playing on your drum set?
Yeah, but the neighbor on
yeah, but fuck him.
Yeah, but the neighbor on the one side, he's only a giant black guy, so it's whatever, man. It's not like he'll come and beat the shit out of me if I'm annoying.
Well, I live in an apartment. This is actually a conversation we've had as well. So, because Kyle is my little brother, 4.5 years, almost 5 years younger, there's always that thing of like little brother not wanting to be like the big brother. And that was a big struggle, I know, for both of us growing up because we shared a lot of the same interests. We both love video games, we both liked acting, playing drums, all that kind of stuff. And once we got into our adult years, it's been fun because like Kyle is buying a house. I don't own a house. So like he's accomplished that pillar adult kind of experience in life before I have. And you had like a real deal big boy job before I did too. When you got hired at the school to start working with, the special needs kids, and you started doing the assistant directing at the school. When you were doing that, I was working at a fucking Barnes and Noble, and then like doing freelance writing things. So now I have a real deal marketing job, but you bought a house first and you got a real deal job first.
Yeah,
that's
win.
Like a pretty big deal. Yeah,
I beat you.
I got married first, but it's 2-1. It's going to be because the tricky thing is who will have kids first, and you have been adamant that you and Kara don't want kids.
Right.
I don't want kids immediately, but my wife certainly does. So I'm assuming we will pass that threshold first. So then we'll be neck and neck. So really, it's like what other adult experience is there? Buying a house, getting a job, getting married, having kids. Like, what's the next one?
I'm gonna beat you to death.
Is that like the next adult experience?
I'm gonna die first. All right, I'm gonna win.
Well, I would say that's a whole other topic for another show. Which one of us will die first and why?
Oh, it's gotta be me. I'm disgusting.
So there you go. That's a little bit about us, where really it's like a lot bit about us, 15 minutes worth about us. But to kind of go into the topic of the things that matter for this podcast, not like our stupid lives, who gives a shit, but our opinions on things like video games. I kind of wanted to talk through what our favorite games are, what our favorite movies are. So Kyle, tell me like some of your favorite video games. And I know we share some of these and others we really disagree on.
Yeah. All right, so hold on to your butt. Bing, bang, boom, Resident Evil 4, best game ever made. stamp it, seal it, mail it to the president. He knows. Resident Evil 4.
Which president? Like, do you think Trump
All
plays
of them.
Resident Evil? Or are you
All
talking
the
about
ones
Obama?
that are
Like,
still
I know
around.
Obama was kind of a gamer. Every president,
Every president.
every president thinks Resident Evil 4 is the best game ever made.
Find them. They gotta
Woodrow
have their
Wilson,
address on file.
dig him up from the grave.
Put the letter in
George
his hand.
Washington. It's in the Bill of Rights.
No, George
Resident
Washington
Evil
was
4.
buried with that GameCube chainsaw controller that they made for it. You know, yep.
So, okay. I have a controversial opinion on Resident Evil 4 that I know you disagree with.
Yeah.
Resident Evil 4 is a great game, but I feel like people like Resident Evil 4 more than it deserves because I think Resident Evil 4 is the only good Resident Evil game.
I think you're full of shit.
So, like, I appreciate the first two games for what they did for, like, the horror game genre. Definitely tentpole releases when they came out. But they control, like, complete garbage. And obviously the graphics don't hold up anymore. Like, Resident Evil 4 is good. Like, it has a fun story. It has a fun twist on the zombie aspect. But still, man, like, the combat's terrible. And there's so many, like, scenes where you're like saving the president's daughter and the escort mission bullshit. Like, come on, man.
Did you just say the combat's terrible?
Yes,
No.
the tank controls. Like, you can't aim and move at the same time. What the fuck is that?
But the whole game is designed around that concept, and the game was designed for the GameCube, so they knew you're because who the fuck's gonna use that stupid C-stick nubby nipple crap? So they had one analog stick to work with, so designed the game around that and made it perfect. I mean, that game is as close to perfect as any video game has ever come, in my fact opinion.
Designing something well around a flawed system does not take away the flawed system. That's all I'm trying to say. Like, yes, they did a good job with that tank control mechanic, but the tank control mechanic is still terrible. It doesn't make it not terrible.
But
it makes it playable.
But what I'm saying is you don't notice it. Well, apparently you do, because you're a hypercritic.
Fucking right, I do.
But it's like,
especially the Wii the Wii version, like trying to aim with a little Wiimote. Are you fucking kidding me?
that's a great version of that game.
Oh my god!
It made it easier, even because even with the imprecise motion controls of the Wii, it still handled well. They knew what they were doing when they made that game. I've played it on every platform it's come out on, including the Wii, obviously, except for, I think there was an Xbox 360 version of it that came out digitally. I didn't play that one, but I've played it on GameCube, PS2, PS3, PS4, and PC, and Wii. I've played it on all of those consoles.
And you've wasted your time on every single one.
Dude.
No, I'm joking. Resident Evil 4 is a good game,
Yes.
but that's the whole thing. Like, I'm going to pick on the things you like.
Such a
so
butthead.
tell me one of your favorite games that I like so that we can agree on something.
Last of Us.
Okay, great game. Phenomenal game.
Yeah.
Arguably
pinnacle
the
of
best
storytelling
game on
and
PS3.
character
Yes.
crafting.
Yes.
Phenomenal.
Excellent game. I don't love that they're making a second one. It was such a standalone experience for me. Like, I'm sure it will be great, don't get me wrong. And what they've shown so far, I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
But that story is so standalone and so satisfying. And even the Left Behind DLC that they did, which I almost liked better than the actual game when it comes to the story. Like, it just fleshed out the world and the characters so well. And the way that The Last of Us ends, just on that, like middle of the road note where you don't really know either way if she believes him or not. You don't know what's going to happen to these characters. It was like super open-ended, but also very satisfying. Such a really good package all around.
Yeah, I just like, I mean, I hate myself, so I played through it on Grounded, and I have beaten it on Grounded, and that's the mode where you don't have the sense, and there's less ammo, and bullets do more damage, but bullets do more damage to enemies as well as you. So that's at least useful. And it feels a little more realistic too. But yeah, I just
didn't want to play it more than once. Like, I liked the story so much. Like, that was my experience. I didn't really feel a want or need to go back to it.
Yeah, I can understand that. I just like, also because I reread books and rewatch movies and replay games a lot more than you do, just in general. I feel,
sure.
Which, some of it is you're older than me, so real life hit you sooner, so you've had less time in which to do that. So, and I also wouldn't say
I'll take that. I'm not sure that's the actual reason, but I'll take that. Yes, it's because I'm more responsible. That's why.
Well, I think you are, in that I spent most of my time in college not at college, and instead replaying and rereading and rewatching things.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, Last of Us, phenomenal game. Kingdom Hearts, I know we agree on. The first one.
Yep, also one of my favorites. Yes.
Really nervous about that
series,
third one.
Yes, it has gone completely off the rails. I liked the second game. I certainly didn't like it as much as the first, but all of those other little side games are just complete nonsense. Even like when they've changed some of the combat mechanics to make like there was like a collectible card game version of one of the Kingdom Hearts games, whatever the fuck the title was. That always a bunch of numbers in them.
Memories.
Oh man, the naming convention of that series is just the worst.
Replayed and beat that on my computer through legal means.
I'll edit that part out, don't worry.
Okay, thanks. No, I said legal means. I'm not admitting to anything. Also, Final Fantasy X, the best Final Fantasy, favorites. Some might say, and others would be wrong.
That's what I like. I like that about the Final Fantasy series because, yes, a lot of the recent games haven't been amazing. I know a lot of people hated Final Fantasy 13. I liked it okay. Final Fantasy 15 I really didn't like. But like going back a little farther, I feel like anybody you ask that is a fan of the series has a different favorite or thinks a different one is the best.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy 4, 6, 7, 9, 10, like I think and you think. A lot of people love 12, which I also love. Like it's just, it really highlights how fantastic that series has been fairly consistently.
Yeah, and how diverse it is and how much it's able to reach different audiences of people as they evolve the franchise. I mean,
just the little tweaks to like the gameplay mechanics. I really like all the different combat mechanics. I really like all the different variations. Even something like Final Fantasy Tactics, which tactical RPGs aren't super my jam, but I still really liked that game.
Yeah, I love Final Fantasy Tactics Advanced.
And hell, man, even Final Fantasy X too. That game's okay. The story is kind of ridiculous. But like the twist on the job system, like it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy X 2 is all right.
You know,
hot take.
I would say it's all right. In large part because it is Final Fantasy X adjacent.
Okay, that's fair. Totally fair.
Other games, Metal Gear Solid. Yes. Love Metal Gear Solid.
We've had so many conversations about the Metal Gear Solid series.
So Metal Gear Solid 1, quick history of my love for Metal Gear Solid and why I'm an insane person.
Here we go.
So when I was younger, you and I had a friend in our neighborhood, and he had a PS1, and he had Metal Gear Solid. And I don't think you and I were allowed to play it, so we'd go over to his house and like watch him play it and kind of play it in secret. And I first got my hands on it and played some of the virtual missions. And I just remember, like, there was that air of it, like, I'm not supposed to be playing this. It's a mature game. There's blood and killing, but it's really cool. Like, And then, so I never played 2. And then 3 came out, and I played that in one sitting on my PS2, Snake Eater. And that just had so many, like, it was so different than what I had remembered of 1. I just became enamored with this idea of like, how is this franchise here? Like, what are all of these characters? What do they have to do with each other? You know, this crazy, insane story, this like a Bond-esque villains and like this camouflage system and the enemy AI being like balls to the wall. And then Metal Gear Solid 4 came out on PS3 and it was like the pinnacle of graphical prowess at the time. The game was beautiful, and in terms of storytelling, I enjoy big long cutscenes in games. That's why I really like the Xenosaga games as well, because it's mostly cutscenes. And that game is definitely a large part cutscenes. And just like seeing the way that franchise has transformed from entry to entry. I'm not a huge fan of 5, but that always kind of enraptured me. And I always thought that was super interesting. And I know there's a whole lot of story bullshit that people are like, oh, this is dumb. Nanomachines are magic.
Yes, it is. It is so dumb.
But like they go into like an insane amount of detail, and they explain everything satisfactorily.
No. If you're a crazy person, like the story of that series makes no fucking sense. It is ridiculous.
Because you're a filthy casual, Shay.
Okay. I shouldn't have to like read a bunch of books and like do a bunch of research online to understand what the hell's happening in a video game. I respect the Metal Gear Solid series from afar, certain aspects of it. Like in Kojima, the same way. Like what he has done in pushing the boundaries of storytelling and gameplay mechanics in games, like all the different intricacies of, especially like those early games and even Metal Gear Solid 5, like the different things that you can do that impact other things.
Yeah.
Like that's super cool and isn't really done a lot in games. But I also feel like two things. One, he doesn't know how to tell a story. Like he has crazy ideas, and I just feel like from a gameplay perspective and a storytelling perspective, he throws shit at a wall, and he needs someone to edit him. Like, he needs someone to censor his ideas and really nail down to the core of what he's trying to say and do. Because I feel like there's this aura around Kojima that everyone's like, everything you say and want to do is gold, so we're going to let you do everything you want to say and do. And that is not the right method for making anything creatively. And that makes me worried for Death Stranding, because like I think it's like I'm interested to see what he's gonna do, like beyond Metal Gear, but I am not super excited for it because I feel like it's gonna be the same shit. And Sony was so desperate to like get this exclusive with him. I just know that they're gonna let him do whatever the hell he wants, and I just don't think that that's what Kojima needs in making a game.
Okay, so I think part of what I think differentiates you and I is that I have always found a way to appreciate a game for its ambitions, and like I like it when the developer and the creators shine through. And I mean, Kojima is nothing but pure ambition, right? Like he has
Sure.
all of these crazy ideas, and you're like B-class RPGs like Two Worlds 2 and Arcania Gothic. Those types of RPGs, I enjoy playing them. Like, they're really rough, and a lot of the systems are imbalanced and, like, sketchy and janky. But I enjoy those games because of how much of the developer's personality and pride in their work and ambition shines through. And that's, I think, I can appreciate a game based on that alone and still enjoy my time with it, even if the game itself is frustrating or confusing. I am able to find those things, pick them out, and then draw enjoyment from the project as a whole. Whereas I don't want to say this is a bad thing, but I feel like you're a little more result-oriented as opposed to
It certainly sounds like you're saying
oriented.
that's a bad thing.
Well, I mean, it is, but I was saying that to mitigate any, emotional damage.
I can appreciate the ambition, the idea. Like, I certainly like to recognize that. But you're right. Like, it tends to, like, especially when it comes to video games and even movies and stuff, I tend to look at the execution of it.
Right.
Like, how well are you executing those ideas? Because I feel like not anybody, but a lot of people can come up with these crazy, wacky, insane ideas. But it's about how you implement them that I think is what is impressive. So I get that. I get the difference in mentality there. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
Like as a, broad strokes kind of a thing. So the only, like, favorite games that I would add, because totally agree about Final Fantasy X, totally agree about Kingdom Hearts. My two favorite Mario games, because, I mean, it's pretty hard to argue that Mario isn't, like, one of the best ongoing series in video game history. Best 2D Mario, Super Mario World.
Okay. Yeah, I would totally agree with that.
Best 3D Mario, Super Mario Galaxy.
Ooh. Yeah, that game was pretty great.
Because Super Mario Galaxy 2 was also great. I liked the Yoshi stuff, but it didn't really add enough. Like, it didn't hit me as much. And then the only other 3D Mario that I really, really love that's way up there is Super Mario 64, which is an absolute classic, but kind of hard to go back to now, just because of the camera issues and some of the platforming didn't work as well as it could have, and as well as like in something like Super Mario Galaxy. So those are my two Mario games.
Okay.
And beyond that, Huge Pokemon fan. I know you are too.
Oh,
I feel like
yeah.
pretty much everybody's a fan of Pokemon, and especially the original Johto games, Red, Blue, and Yellow. Those like were my jam, and I still go back. I don't play handheld games that often. I own a DS. I don't even have like a 3DS or anything, but I have Leaf Green that I go back to and play at least once a year. Fucking love those games so much. The only other two big games, which I go back and forth on which one is my favorite of all time, BioShock, which is just a completely phenomenal game.
Totally.
Much like The Last of Us, I just feel like the sum is greater than its parts. Like, I know it has some issues when it comes to the shooting mechanics, and like the aim down sights isn't amazing, and some of the enemy movement isn't super smooth. But from like a storytelling perspective and a world building perspective, which are things that I really enjoy in video games, like nothing tops Rapture and Andrew Ryan, and just the way that you're manipulated throughout that story, and that huge reveal at the end was so amazing. I had a conversation with a friend of mine a long time ago of like, if there was one game that we could go back and erase our memory of so that we could experience it again for the first time, BioShock hands down. Just so phenomenal.
Yeah, and like the pinnacle of environmental storytelling, right?
For
like
sure.
coming across an area and not, I mean, they had the audio logs and stuff, but you come across an area and you know what happened there, right? Based on, like just bottles strewn on the floor and, the paint on the walls and blood, how bodies are left and things like that. Just really, really amazing. And I mean, you and I, we never had a decent PC growing up, so like we didn't play System Shock or any of the games that, I know BioShock is supposed to have drawn from those. And I know people talk about the environmental storytelling in those games too. But, for us, I feel like our touchstone for that is probably BioShock, and I totally agree with you on that.
And on the audio logs thing, like I know that's been a big complaint of the Ken Levine games in the past, even with like BioShock Infinite, which I also really liked. Like I get why audio logs can kind of suck sometimes, and just it can occasionally feel like a lazy way to tell these little side stories and do world building, and we've talked about this before, because I'm playing through Horizon Zero Dawn right now, which is a great game, and it has a bunch of audio logs in it. One of the things that, like, one of my biggest complaints about that game is it gives you a bunch of exposition dumps in these certain areas where there are like 5 audio logs right next to each other.
Ugh.
And so what you end up having to do is listening to them, and then you just stand there and like you put your controller down and listen to these conversations. One of the things that makes BioShock so successful with its audio logs is that they're spread out and hidden in ways where, one, you're not even going to find all of them unless you're specifically looking. And 2, most of them are placed in areas that are more ambient, this like world building, exploratory areas where you can pick it up, listen to it, and keep moving. Fight enemies while you're listening, loot boxes while you're listening. You're never like stuck standing there listening to the audio log.
Right.
I remember the similar story things would happen in like the Gears of War games, where like, hey, someone comes on the radio and your character slows down to a crawl as they walk because they've timed out the audio log. Like, that sucks. That's like bad design. I just feel like BioShock does those audio logs as well as you can do those audio logs.
Yeah, absolutely. I 110% agree.
And so the final game that I want to talk about, which sometimes is my favorite game, sometimes it's BioShock, is Skyrim. And I know a lot of people place blame on Skyrim for like the modern methodology of Bethesda games, because they look back at the days of like Oblivion and even Morrowind as being better Elder Scrolls and better at Bethesda games. But I'm the kind of person that when it comes to open world RPGs, I always had a really hard time getting into them. Just the open nature of it and how many quests there were, I kind of get decision anxiety and decision paralysis, where rather than doing one of these 50 things, I kind of do nothing and I just get lost and then lose momentum. And for whatever reason, Skyrim really hooked me and got me to go through. And I've put well over 1,000 hours into that game over, 5-6 different playthroughs on PS3, PS4, PC with mods. And even the modding community, like, it's not part of the core game, obviously, but the modding community for Skyrim is awesome. Like, there are so many cool things to do and see in that game, and it just bums me out that my PC is not a little better, because like, with some mods I can't run it faster than like 15 frames a second, which makes it impossible to play. But that game, like, because it was my first experience with an open world RPG really sinking its hooks into me, it just holds a special place.
Why do you?
And I know you're farther along on the Oblivion side.
Yes, yeah, definitely. I mean, that Oblivion was my Skyrim, right?
Yeah.
Why do you think Skyrim was the one that kind of hooked you like that?
I really don't know. Like, I think it was just because, like, I committed to it early on, and I had already recognized, hey, if I don't really go for this, I will lose momentum, and I want to play this game. So I just kind of forced myself to muscle through it a little bit, and then it just completely hooked me. And since playing Skyrim, like, I've gone back and played Fallout 3, which I had never finished before that. I've gone back and played Oblivion, which I had never finished before that. And, like, it made me appreciate those games more. You know, especially, like, in Oblivion, some of the mechanics were definitely improved in Skyrim, in my opinion. But it still made me like those games more because it kind of got me in the right mindset to keep moving and not just, like, wander, to actually stick to quest lines and see them through to the end.
Yeah, because those games are structured in such a way that you will go pretty much everywhere as long as you are doing the quests, right? They'll take you on a route to discover most places, just by nature of the way they're structured. So
the sense of discovery is definitely, like, the thing I like most in Skyrim. I know certainly the main story is not fantastic, and even some of the main guild stories aren't as good as they've been in past games, but just, like, the discoverability of coming across a random awesome sword or, like, you know, a random Daedric artifact quest that you don't realize is for a Daedric artifact until you're halfway through it. Like, that discovery in Skyrim, I think, is really, really good.
Yeah.
So, okay, so that kind of sums up a lot of our favorite games. I feel like we have a lot of, like, different genres and time frames represented there. We've been playing games our whole lives.
Yeah, that's a nice scope.
Kind of moving to the next thing. Walk me through just, like, a couple of some of your favorite movies, favorite TV shows.
Okay. Well, all right. So, I love Tom Cruise, not as a person, but I love Tom Cruise in movies.
He's easy to watch. He's easy to watch. He's a good action movie star.
And as you've put it before, he gives hope to the short people that we can be cool action stars too. And
the dude can run.
Yes,
the dude knows how to run.
Yeah. So the Mission Impossible movies are phenomenal.
Well, like every movie he's in, he runs in it, like just full out, you know, stiff hands, like pumping. I feel like it's in his contract that every movie he does, he has to fucking run. Like, it's something because he knows he looks cool when he runs, and he does.
Because like he's pumping, man. He's moving. He books.
But yeah, so you're saying the Mission Impossible series? Yeah, I also love that.
Totally.
The first one's definitely my favorite.
Yeah, I would probably say the first one as well. It has the most, like, spy element to it.
Yeah.
And the other ones
twists
definitely
and
hit
turns
more
are more
action.
satisfying.
Right. Yes.
Yes, definitely.
Totally.
And the recent ones have been good. Like, honestly, I get the two most recent ones, Rogue Nation and whatever other one there was. I get those mixed up because they're kind of starting to feel a little rote when it comes to the stories.
Yeah.
But they're still just, like, really easy to watch, fun action movies.
Right. Yeah. Like, I don't ever find myself paying really close attention when watching those movies. Yeah. But it's just, like, I enjoy watching that dude run around and do some cool stuff. Like, even the Jack
and
Reacher
like he does
movies,
his own stunts too. Like, it's cool.
Like, it's neat.
I like that.
And then, you know, Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. Like, my two biggest and most, you know, engrossing genres for me are sci-fi and fantasy. And, you know, I feel like that's in large part due to those early Star Wars films. Like, when I was younger, watching those and that sparking that interest in me. And then, you know, for Lord of the Rings, just how well crafted and faithful, you know, to a large degree, as large as it can in the cinematic universe, to the source content the Lord of the Rings movies were. I mean, they left some stuff out because, you know, the movies couldn't be 95 hours long. But I felt like they
watched the extended edition.
Yeah.
The extended edition for Return of the King is like 4.5 hours, and it's brilliant.
Yeah. And that's my favorite way to watch those movies is the extended editions.
Yes, for sure.
But yeah, I definitely feel like Star Wars and Lord of the Rings sparked that interest in me for sci-fi and fantasy, and that's like a lifelong love for me that I feel like I'll never peter out on either of those genres. So I have a lot. You know, those are like really generic answers, but I don't just like them because they're pop culture hits. I like them because they were some of my first really big exposures to those genres and have sparked, an interest in me.
I feel like when it comes to the sci-fi and fantasy stuff, that kind of impacts your favorite shows and your favorite books and comics. And stuff
it
too.
spans
I feel like
mediums.
Those two, and I mean those are very broad genres. But when it comes, it's like high fantasy and like more light sci-fi.
Sure.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Absolutely. And Austin Powers.
I know it's such a random, but that's like more like nostalgic for us.
Yeah, that has a sentimental tinge
Yes, that's the word,
to it
sentimental.
because Dad, and I would always get together and watch those movies, during holidays and stuff like that, and so that was like a cool guy bonding time for us
For sure.
and so that's why I think of those movies often in my brain,
Yeah.
more often than I probably should.
And the first one is good. Like, it holds up pretty well. It's very funny.
Yeah.
The second and third ones are not amazing. Goldmember has its charm. The second one's definitely less successful. But, like, they're funny movies. Like, that was back when Mike Myers was at his peak, man.
Yeah.
Those were, like, they're funny. They're funny.
Yeah. So what about you?
I mean, some of the same stuff. I obviously, love Star Wars. It's, like, probably my favorite thing on the planet. Like, of anything. I love Star Wars so fucking much. And just everything about it. Like, I want to watch all the movies and watch all the animated shows, read all the books, all the comics, anything I can consume that is Star Wars, I will consume. When it comes to the best movie of that series, it's Empire Strikes Back, hands down, which is not only the greatest Star Wars movie, but it is the best movie ever made. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean,
I went there.
Empire's real good, all right? And it is a close second for me, but my favorite is episode 6.
See, and I don't get that. Like, all three of them are phenomenal. All three of them are miles better than the prequels, and even still, all three of them are a lot better than Force Awakens or Rogue One. But episode 6, to me, is easily the worst of the first three.
So, all right, so I've given this a lot of thought because we've had this discussion multiple times. And because, Empire is like the perfect storm in terms of movie formula, right?
It's the dark middle chapter.
Yes. But episode 6 is just... My big reason is Scout Troopers are fucking awesome. Like, they are so
and yes,
cool.
they
and
are, but, like, that's why. That's the reason.
All right, so...
Scout Troopers.
I've thought about
that was the tiebreaker.
and I think this plays into it. So it's also got, that really big space battle, ground battle happening at the same time.
Totally.
And I know people don't like the Ewoks. I fucking love the Ewoks. I think they're great.
Hate the Ewoks. Hate the Ewoks.
But oh god, what was it? It was the GameCube Star Wars game, Rogue Squadron 3, I think it was. There is a level where you're on a speeder bike going through Endor, the forest.
Right.
And you can play it in first person, and so you've got like Luke's hands in front of you, one with the black glove and the other ungloved on the speeder bike, and you're going through. It's first person. I used to grab a pile of pillows, straddle them, put a fan in front of my face, put on a cape and my Boba Fett helmet, and play that level like over and over and over again as fast as I possibly could, like full throttle the entire time. And I think that's probably a large part of it of why I really
it is a
love
great movie.
episode
Like
6.
And now, I mean, not only talking about it makes me want to watch them, but like thinking of all the set pieces in Return of the Jedi, that movie is great. Like the opening Tatooine sequence is awesome. Like, yes, everything, all the Endor stuff is great. The space battle stuff is great. But just like, I mean, Hoth, man, like that's my mic drop.
That's
Hoth.
true.
Like that's the best sequence in any of those movies.
Yeah.
It's so awesome. And like, yeah, okay. Star Wars, that's a whole other episode. Just walking through. Like that would be a fun episode to do. Let's talk about every single Star Wars thing that has ever come out, ever.
That episode would never stop.
And I would love to do it. But kind of beyond the Star Wars stuff, and I agree with you on Lord of the Rings as well. Love those movies. I've always been a big Disney movie fan.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of different Disney movies that I really like. I feel like the one in recent memory that doesn't get as much props as it probably should is Emperor's New Groove.
Oh, yeah.
I know you love that movie too. That movie, it's just like, and part of it's because it's still the classic animated style, but it's with more modern sensibilities because it's more recent. Just the humor of it feels more fresh than a lot of the humor in like the old quote unquote classic Disney movies.
Yeah, well, it feels like an expansion on that humor from the old movie. Like Aladdin has a lot of those same little quippy moments like that.
Yeah,
but and
Aladdin's great.
Yeah, oh, totally. But it's executed to a higher degree and frequency in Emperor's New Groove, like to the point that it maintains almost like a frenetic pace of hilarity throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like there is constantly something for you to be smiling or chuckling at that entire movie.
And all the performances are so good. Like, David Spade is amazing. John Goodman is amazing. Freaking Patrick Warburton is beyond amazing. Kronk, oh my god. That scene when he's, like, getting rid of the body and he has his own theme song going. It's so good. It's so good.
Yeah.
Like, that's we talk about, like, rewatching and replaying things, which I do a lot less than you. That's one of those movies that I could just watch on repeat and find funny and never get sick of it. The only other movie that comes to my head when it comes to, like, favorite movies, which is more of like the dramatic side, would be Gladiator. And like, I don't know why it is that I love that movie so much, because, you know, I think Russell Crowe's a good actor. I don't think he's an amazing actor in a lot of the stuff that he's done, but his performance in that movie is really, really like multi-leveled and really engrossing in the arc that character goes on. But it's also about, you know, Joaquin Phoenix is so sinister in that movie, and watching that like after Game of Thrones has happened and people clung on to the character of Joffrey so much. I feel like Joaquin Phoenix in Gladiator is like what Joffrey would have been grown up.
Oh, totally.
Which is a realization I literally just now came to. And
You're
I'm like,
right.
oh my god, that is 100% like what it is. That movie's just really good. I don't know what it is specifically about that movie that makes it stand out from other really good kind of like historical war dramas. Like, you know, I really love Braveheart. I really love Saving Private Ryan. Those are phenomenal movies. But something about Gladiator makes it kind of above. And I'm not sure why, but
yeah, and just like the image,
one of my faves.
Yeah, the image of Russell Crowe walking through the field of wheat, like his hand trailing the tops of the wheat.
It's beautiful.
That pops into my head pretty often, actually, because I just something about those shots and that image is really powerful. And like, you know, I always love seeing actors from that movie pop up in other movies too. It's like, oh, it's the guy from Gladiator. And like that's like a really weird thing to say because no one ever talks about Gladiator, so people always look at
I know,
funny.
maybe that's part of it. Maybe that's part of why I like it so much, is people don't talk about Gladiator as much as they should.
Yeah, so you get to appreciate it quietly.
Right. So obviously sci-fi fantasy is something you really like and I like too. So what about your favorite shows? I know a lot of your favorites there are like sci-fi fantasy shows as well.
Yeah. So I also really love pirates. My girlfriend and I, like, we have a Renaissance festival here in Ohio, and we go there every year, and we've been compiling parts for pirate costumes. And this past year, I got my captain's coat, and it was absurdly expensive. But I look pretty dope in that pirate coat. But I love pirates. Assassin's Creed Black Flag. That's the last Assassin's Creed I've played because I was like, can't top this. It's got fucking pirates.
Right, for sure.
So there's a show on Starz called Black Sails, and it just concluded, and the ending of it is totally a lead up to Treasure Island. And I know the creators.
Oh, cool.
The creators have talked about, like, Treasure Island is a story that's already been told. So from the beginning, their plan was to create a show that leads up to the book, and then you could read the book. And then, so if they were to ever do anything else with the series, it would follow a couple of the other kind of side characters that they invented. So I mean, it's just
how many seasons was that?
4, 5.
Okay, that's pretty easily watchable. Part of it for me,
4 or
like, there are
5.
so many great shows out there that I haven't seen, and if you tell me something's like, oh yeah, it's 8 seasons, I'm never watching that shit. Like, I know, The West Wing is considered one of the greatest shows of all time. It was like 9 seasons. I am never gonna watch that show.
Yeah.
But something like Black Sails that's more recent, that I feel like is more condensable. Like, I definitely want to give that show a try.
Yeah, and just like there are so many ups and downs with the characters in terms of like, do I really like this guy? Like, I feel like I do, but fuck, he did this or he said this, and that makes me but I kind of like, he's a badass. So but yeah. It's got that total. It's a Game of Thrones formula through and through, but like with much less frequent death. I will say that because they actually give you time to get attached to the characters before they do some sinister shit with them. And more in the sci-fi vein of things, Stargate SG-1 is probably one of my favorite sci-fi shows of all time. Also Farscape, just two like really campy, fun, Americanized formula of sci-fi shows. I know like there are a couple seasons of Doctor Who that I like, but that's not quite my sense of humor. It's like not quite there. It's a British show, and just me as a person, it doesn't quite line up all the time. So that's why there are only a couple of seasons that I really like. And that's got a lot of heart and camp to it too. But I really like Stargate and Farscape. I think those have a slightly more American formula to the humor, at least.
A lot of those like sci-fi shows, I don't know why, but like I always have a hard time kind of getting into them. And maybe it's the more campy attitude that they take that I don't connect with as much. But the only like sci-fi show I can think of that I really liked was Firefly, and that was more of a Western than it was a sci-fi show. I didn't even think
of Firefly. Yeah, Firefly was great.
Yeah.
A lot of the times though, like those sci-fi shows, they're like a 1 or 2 season run. A lot of the times, and something that can be difficult, and it's something I'm running into as well with, because I watch a lot of anime now. Don't say anything. And something I'm running into with that is I've seen, because those are real short too. I've seen so many of them, and this is analogous to the sci-fi shows, that I mix elements of stories and confuse them with others, and like there are mechanics to the world and the sci-fi universes of the shows I watch that blend in some ways but don't match in others, and so it can get confusing, right? Like I've just seen so many that they blend into each other but they don't match, right? And so that can get a little weird, especially with the sci-fi shows, because like they're different alien races or like these different coalitions you're supposed to remember all this information on, and I watch them in like large chunks in like 1 or 2 sittings, and it just it all kind of blends together. Like I don't watch them as they come out, right? I'm doing them in hunks, and so that can have a negative effect on my ability to parse the information from other shows. But yeah, so, other shows I like: Seinfeld, greatest comedy of all time.
Easily.
South Park, one of my favorite animated shows. Again, I think that has a similar Metal Gear Solid spark in me, in that like I wasn't really supposed to be watching it when I started watching it, and so it was like the forbidden fruit kind of thing. And then it just really got its hooks into me. And I think South Park's been solid all the way down the line, and I can't think of any other shows like that.
It's definitely been less consistent in recent years, but every season there are at least 2 or 3 really standout episodes.
Right, like episodes that like people still talk about.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So what about you?
I mean, kind of, you brought up a little earlier, and I know you don't enjoy it as much, but Game of Thrones is one of the best shows on TV right now. I do want to go into your and my feelings on Game of Thrones at a later date. That's a much bigger conversation. But that show is just so good. I read the books as well. I was a casual reader. I haven't read them for like years and years. I watched the first season of the show first and then started reading the books, which I know like makes people not respect me for Game of Thrones, but I don't give a shit. The books are just so good. I don't know, Kyle, why you haven't read them. I think you would really dig them. But the show is also really good. Probably my favorite show on TV right now is House of Cards, which is like a weird one. I feel like people don't talk about that show as much as when it first launched. Yeah. And I think the first 2 seasons of it were the best seasons, and honestly I would have been satisfied had they ended after season 2, because it kind of leads up to Frank becoming the president, and that's how season 2 ends. And to me, like, that was his whole goal for the show, was to become president,
right?
And that would have felt satisfying. And the rest of it has been like oh, he's getting in trouble for this. These past crimes are coming back, blah, blah, blah. I'm trying to be vague because I know you haven't seen it, so it doesn't mean anything to you. But, like, it's still really, really good. And just the acting from Kevin Spacey and Robin Wright is just so amazing. Like, all the levels to their conversations with one another and the manipulations that they have. It's just like, it's one of those shows where every little thing that happens, is going to matter and likely in a way that you didn't anticipate.
Yeah.
And I always respect shows that can surprise me because those are fairly rare. Having been in the entertainment industry for a long time and kind of the way I think about things very analytically, it's really hard for me to be surprised by like a twist. And it's a blessing and a curse because it's fun because it makes me feel smart when I saw something coming. But it's also a negative because I'm very rarely surprised with those kinds of things. And House of Cards is a show that consistently surprises me.
Yeah, and I guess I never knew Kevin Spacey was that talented until I watched House of Cards.
Oh, man. Like, yeah. And yes, like that has been his modern, I don't want to say breakout role because the dude's been around for decades, but like that's what catapulted him into like the A-list television tier.
Being in Call of Duty.
Yeah, for sure.
The pinnacle.
The ultimate pinnacle of his career. But I mean, that dude's been fucking amazing for years and years. But when it comes to like the comedic side of things, totally agree with you on Seinfeld. It's my favorite live action sitcom. I'm a big Simpsons fan. Grew up watching that show. Seasons like 3 through 9 are kind of the cream of the crop. But I'll watch anything like through season 15. And even nowadays, like I don't really watch it anymore, but I've seen random episodes. And like it's still a good show. It's not what it used to be, but I still respect it. And for a show to go that long and maintain its relevancy, similar to South Park, is very respectable.
Yeah.
It's tough because so many shows that I love are like with caveats. Because I look at a show like The Office, which I consider to be one of my favorite shows, but like after season 7, it's basically unwatchable. And even like in seasons 5, 6, and 7, there are a lot of episodes that I don't enjoy, a lot of storylines I don't enjoy. So when I say like, oh, The Office is one of my favorite shows, it's, oh, the first 4 seasons of The Office is one of my favorite shows. Similar thing with Scrubs. Like after season 5, it took a nosedive. So like the first 5 seasons of Scrubs is one of my favorite shows. And I don't I don't want to have to qualify my favorite thing like that, which is one of the reasons why I love Seinfeld so much, is it maintained that high bar from the beginning to the end. And they went out on a high note. Obviously the finale was disappointing, but like when it comes to the season as a whole, season 9 was just as good, if not better, than season 1, season 2. So that I really like. One other show that like just came now to me that is more of an under the radar show is Venture Brothers.
Oh yeah,
that show is so delightfully twisted and weird, and another Patrick Warburton joint.
Right.
Like I love that show so much, and it actually reminds me I haven't seen whenever the most recent season was. That show's been in a really weird development where like they'll go a year or two between seasons, which really sucks. But I need to catch up on that show and rewatch it because that show's so weird and amazing. If you haven't seen Venture Brothers, it's an animated show. It's funny, but it primarily it's like a twist on old like 70s animated shows and 80s animated shows like Johnny Quest kinds of things.
Very Johnny Quest.
Where it's like a kid detective spy grows up. And so his kids are trying to follow in his footsteps. He's like this scientist, but he's failed scientist. He has a super villain that hates him called the Monarch, which is one of my favorite villains in all of television. So if you haven't seen Venture Brothers, you need to check it out. It's really fantastic. So to wrap up our favorites segment, now that we're like an hour into this thing, what about your favorite like books and comics? Like real quickly, we've talked a little bit about some of them as they relate to like books or shows and movies, but what you got?
Yeah, so I mean, books I've read a ton of Star Wars books. I'm not going to negate those, but I've already talked about my love for Star Wars. So I probably read more fantasy than anything else. So really anything by Brandon Sanderson, like he wrote Stormlight Archives, Mistborn, a bunch of other series and stuff. He's just an amazing writer in terms of his ability to manage large scope. Like he does really good, like great political intrigue, and like he really leads you on his path with him, and shows you like these fascinating stories with large world scope, and in terms of like big things happening that affect all the people in the universe. in that universe and that kind of thing. Then also Patrick Rothfuss, who wrote Kingkiller Chronicles, which is apparently getting, I think, a video game or a TV show or something.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was getting a TV show. I feel like fucking every book series is getting a TV show now.
Yeah, but I mean, he just has this way about, like, the way he tells his story is really interesting for Kingkiller Chronicles. Like, there's a present day, and then everything else is told by a character from the present about his past. He has this way of writing about music that is really interesting. Like, there are lyrics in there, but he more writes about music and how it emotionally evokes, or how it evokes emotions from the characters listening to the music. It's a really interesting way that he does it. I've never read anything like that before, and I think it's very unique and kind of a hallmark of his style, because music has a big thing to do with the Kingkiller Chronicles books. Also, when I was younger, going through high school, I read Aragon. That was my first really big foray into fantasy, apart from all the like 5 million Redwall books I read. Harry Potter, love Harry Potter. Who freaking doesn't?
One of my favorites. I'm rereading that series now for like the 20th time. Yeah. I love Harry Potter so much. It's like it feels like wrapping yourself in a warm blanket.
Totally.
Like, there's an element of nostalgia to it, but it just like it's one of the. It just feels like home, and I love that series.
Yeah, I mean, like, I used to, beg Mom to take me to the Barnes and Noble to go pick up the new Harry Potter book, and I'd finish it that night. When I was younger, Garfield, Calvin and Hobbes kind of kickstarted my my love of comics, and then from there I went on to Spider-Man comics, then Ultimate Spider-Man, Ultimate X-Men. Those are a couple of my favorite superhero series. And then Image Comics has been doing some really great shit lately.
I know.
Like Descender is an ongoing sci-fi one that's really good. Low is another ongoing, very good. The Walking Dead's probably one of my favorite comic series of all time. I enjoy it more than the show. Saga, again, one of the best comics ongoing.
Yeah.
And Chew, which just wrapped up, I really, really had a good time with. So
that one, Chew, I read back in the day, like because I got into comics in college probably 6 or 7 years ago. A friend of mine was a huge comic book person, and I hadn't really ever been into it. And but I liked superheroes and stuff, and so it kind of felt like a natural marriage. And he was a big DC and Marvel person, and so like this, I think it was the summer between my freshman and sophomore year of college, I borrowed like every comic book he owns, and it was like literally thousands of issues, and I read through everything that summer, and it was so much fun, and really like dove me into a love of comics that like I don't read as much as I used to, because kind of once I got out into the real world and realized, hey, I have bills to pay, I could no longer spend literally $50 a week on comic books.
That's crazy.
But that's one of the reasons why I like Image so much, is that stuff's so standalone, and they let the creators kind of own what they want. And like, there aren't these crossovers where you have to buy 6 books in a week in order to know what the fuck's going on. And they make it really easy to try new stuff, because like their first trades for things are $10. Like, to get $10 for a 6-issue trade, like that's, you can't really ask for much better than that. It makes it really easy to experiment and try new things. Because like, I totally agree, Saga's really amazing. I borrowed East of West from you that I've been really enjoying. I really love Sex Criminals. It has this great sense of humor and like darkness to it, and this great sense of mystique. The Wicked and the Divine is really, really good. I love the art in that. But when it comes to like this core superhero stuff that I don't read a ton of anymore, but that I like, if I had more money and more time and more will to catch up, my favorites are like Spider-Man comics, Batman, Green Arrow's one of my favorite superheroes, Green Lantern. But the actual story arcs that I really loved, J. Michael Straczynski's run on Spider-Man is my favorite Spider-Man run. Scott Snyder's run on Batman is my favorite Batman run. I'll read basically anything that Jeff Johns writes. He doesn't write a ton of stuff anymore, but back when I was first getting into comics, he was like the big writer for Green Lantern, and that's one of the things that made me like that character. And he went on to reboot Justice Society and then Aquaman, and he's kind of taken a swing at a lot of the underappreciated characters in DC and made me really like them and be interested in them.
That's cool.
Which is one of the reasons I really like him as a writer. And he's been more involved now in their movie production aspect, which I think is great because their movies have been mostly garbage.
Oh, yeah.
And he's taking a more active role in the storytelling and the kind of the larger scope, which I think can only benefit those movies. So I'm excited to see that happen once Zack Snyder has less power over those movies.
Yeah,
but
that's good.
DC movies, that's a topic for another time because those, yikes. So yes, I mean that's kind of like a big picture wrap up of all of our favorite things when it comes to the topics we'll be talking about on the podcast. Because I mean, we can talk about our favorite kind of wood, but that's not necessarily super topical to the Shea Hates Everything podcast.
Yeah,
I don't even know what would your favorite wood be? Like when I don't know a bunch of woods, but it'd probably be like cherry wood. It's probably more about like the finishes. I'm thinking of like wood in my cabinets in my apartment are cherry wood, and I really like those. I don't even know like what a bunch of woods. I like redwood trees.
Yeah,
I don't know what the
those are
redwood
cool.
is.
They're big.
Yeah. So there's your wood
of the week.
Speaking of, we have our final segment for the episode, which is I'm very excited to continue, which is Shay's Hate of the Week. Hate of the Week. So the point of this is basically just a topic that is pissing me off lately, or, you know, pissing Kyle off lately. It'll probably more often be from me than it will from him because it is called Shea Hates Everything after all. But it's whatever's grinding my gears currently. I know you hate grinding my gears.
Stupid.
I like it because it feels like something an old man would say, and I like that.
Yeah. Get off my lawn! You're grinding my gears.
Grinding my gears. But for today, Shay's Hate of the Week is entitled gamers. So this is a bit of a broad-reaching thing, but it was kind of I kind of got the impetus from it from after E3 happened. Going on Facebook and seeing a lot of people commenting on, you know, oh, here's this new trailer for the new Spider-Man game, or, oh, hey, Nintendo announced Metroid Prime 4, like that kind of stuff. And there was one where they were showing gameplay of Uncharted: The Lost Legacy, the new, I guess it's a standalone game, but it's sort of DLC for Uncharted 4, but with, you know, Chloe and Nadine, which I'm excited to play. I love the Uncharted series. I certainly get the mentality of like, probably time to give this series a little bit of a rest and kind of reboot it. Also, Uncharted 4 just came out last year. Might need a bit of a break. I definitely get that mentality. But someone commented on there like, oh, this is so fucking stupid. Why are they making this game? It's a waste of their resources. They should be focusing on The Last of Us 2. Like, I don't want them to make more Uncharted. Uncharted 4 was totally pointless. Like, Naughty Dog is making a mistake by making this. And I guess for me, it was like, if that's your opinion, that's okay. But speaking in this like broad brush mentality of, I'm ignoring the fact that other people like this thing, it is stupid and should not exist simply because I don't like it, is absolutely ridiculous. And someone responded to them as like, what are you talking about? Uncharted 4 was pointless and bad. Like, that game was amazing. Even though, yes, like, you could hear an argument that they probably should have let it go after 3. The story in that game was great. The gameplay additions they made were great. Like, why would you hate on Uncharted 4? And he was like, well, I didn't play it. It just seemed pointless. And it's like, for real? You didn't even play the fucking game and you're going to talk about that it was pointless and shouldn't exist? Not to mention the fact that, like, oh, you're mad that Naughty Dog is working on a new Uncharted because it's taking resources away from Last of Us 2. Like, they have multiple teams at that studio working on different games. It's not like it's 10 dudes in a basement that can only work on one thing at a time. Like, they're also working on new IP as well. Like, just because they're working on this thing that you're not interested in doesn't mean that they aren't also working on stuff you might be interested in. It's just, like, I guess the broad stroke of it is this entitlement, this feeling that because I don't care about it means it has no value. And I just think that's shitty. Like, that's a selfish way of looking at things.
Yeah, that's what I like to call being a bad human. Like zero empathy or sympathy or thought outside yourself. Just like you said, broad stroke. If it's not for me, no one can have it. Like, no one should have it. Kind of a mentality. That's 120% wrong.
Yes.
And if you listen to this podcast, you'll notice every time I mention a percentage, it's over 100. That's something I've become aware of and I'm trying to fix. But just like, so when I'm online, I'm a benefit of the doubt kind of person, because I know sometimes the heat of the moment, you hit send and you don't really think it through, and the majority of the time when we're typing things online or reading people's comments, it's difficult to get the context of their situation and what they're actually trying to convey. Another really big problem is people don't try to convey what they mean anymore. They just send.
Yes.
Like, that's all they do now, and that's super frustrating. And I think in part Twitter has contributed to this, but I also don't think it's Twitter's fault. I think it's us as humans being shitty humans. Like, that it's just in our nature. Well, I guess actually he's being a good human then, if it's in our nature. But just to like be selfish and shitty and just want to lash out at things, right?
Well, it's like the anonymity of the internet too. Like there, and it, which is weird on Facebook because it does show your name, but it's still that mentality that like no one knows who I like. I'm not face to face with someone, so I can just be a bad person and there are no consequences.
Right. Yeah, and that like that. I don't want to say I get that mentality, because I don't, but I do.
Like, I mean, I can understand it. Like, analytically, I can understand why. That doesn't make it right.
Yeah,
I
cannot connect to that.
Yeah,
on a personal level.
You can't justify that kind of mentality.
No.
And it's also like it comes from a place of ignorance too a lot of times.
Totally.
Because like this person like bitching about Uncharted 4 even though they didn't play it. Like they complained like, "Oh, and this even goes back to the Nathan Drake collection. Why'd they put that out when they could have been working on a new game?" And I'm like, fucking Naughty Dog didn't make that collection, you moron. Like, if you're gonna bitch about, like, that's my thing.
Yeah.
If you're gonna bitch about something, be educated on it. Have justification for your opinion. Because I certainly don't want to be a hypocrite. I know I can be a negative person. Complaining about things can tend to be fun. I like to think I do it in a fun, jovial way. And on this podcast, I will certainly make fun of things and degrade things for the sake of fun, for conversation. And I can see how someone might say, like, oh, well, what you're doing is the same as what they are doing. The difference, I think, is, like, I'm not trying to make someone feel bad for liking a thing. I might make fun of you for liking Metal Gear Solid, for instance, like, in a joking way to pick at you. But I'm not going to actually say, like, your opinion on this has no value. The thing you like has no value, and therefore you have no value. Like, that's so like mean-hearted, and I certainly don't think that's the kind of person that I am. And it's just like it's entitlement and ignorance and like what you're getting at of like this human nature of not being responsible for your actions, not explaining your point of view and perspective, and also just like expecting, because I have this opinion on it, it matters. Like, my opinion matters more than anyone else's simply because I think it does.
Sure. And there's also a degree of, I don't know, it's like self-imposed ignorance almost. Like, like you're saying, the guy, he knows he didn't play Uncharted 4. He knows what he doesn't know, but he's still going to make a statement based on knowledge that he doesn't fucking know.
Yes, it's willful ignorance. Because the Naughty Dog collection, like, I can forgive not knowing that Blue Point Studios worked on that and it wasn't Naughty Dog.
Sure.
Because that, like, maybe he doesn't know that.
It's
but yes,
easy to look at a brand and associate it with a small group of people because that's just easier in your brain, right?
But to know that you didn't play Uncharted 4 and then say it's bad, like, why? How can you say that? Like, it doesn't make sense.
Right.
I would never give an opinion on something that I know nothing about. Like, that's something that I feel very confident in.
Yeah, like, I could say, you know, I heard from these sources that it was not good for these reasons, but I would never be like, this is bad. Why?
Right.
I don't know, I didn't play it, but it sucks. Like, that.
And I would always qualify it. Like, hey, you know, I haven't played a lot of Metal Gear Solid. I've played parts of the first two games, parts of the third game. I've seen a lot of the fourth game played. I've seen a lot of videos of the fifth game played. I can speak to the aspects that I don't like or that I think are of not of a low quality, but like that didn't connect with me. But I'm not going to say like everything about Metal Gear Solid 3 is the worst because I didn't fucking play it. It's just like shut the hell up. That's my point.
Yeah.
If you aren't me, shut the hell up. Like, if I don't ask your opinion, shut the hell up. So that's the Shea Hates Everything podcast.
That's a wrap.
Like, I felt like this was a good topic to start with about this like negativity, like this foundless negativity, because that's like the point of this podcast is, I mean, it's not only to talk about the negatives of things, we talk about good things too, but that's kind of the brand, the concept behind Shea Hates Everything is to bitch about things in a fun way. So I figured why not start with a hate of the week that can easily be turned back in my face and make me look bad.
Well,
so,
I think the difference
there you
is
go.
most of the things you and I are going to hate on in the podcast are their hates based on hates based on substance, right? There's a core
and they're
something
personal.
there. Yes.
They're personal hates.
Yes.
They're like, I don't like this because this. It's not like this thing is objectively bad. You should feel bad for liking it.
Yeah, it's not the This Sucks podcast. It's the Shea Hates Everything podcast.
Yes.
Like, it is very...
Yes. Thank you for the help in branding.
You're welcome. Oh, shadeseverything.com. You go an email at, All right, hey, with that makes 5. That's a nice round number.
Well, that doesn't count. You gave that plug.
Oh, fine.
You can't count that against me.
All right, well, you're only at 4 then. I feel like you haven't been doing a good job.
I know, it was a pretty good first episode. I didn't plug my website that much. But I'm going to again because now we're at the end.
Right.
So thank you, everybody, for listening to the pilot episode of the Shea Hates Everything podcast. We obviously don't have any emails today because it's our first episode. But feel free to send any questions, concerns, thoughts, opinions to info@SheaHatesEverything.com. Also, feel free to visit SheaHatesEverything.com for like video game reviews and my opinions on shit in case you're not getting enough of it like on this podcast for the last hour and 15 minutes. So thank you everybody for listening. Kyle, thank you for joining me, and we will be back with another episode. In the next episode we will be talking about more of what we're currently playing and watching and reading, and also we're going to take a look back at E3 since we never got the opportunity to do that, and talk about some of the big E3 games and what we think and feel, and why all video games are terrible and the industry is dying. So thanks everybody for listening, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.